Welcome in for this Sabres edition of Take Two. Jonathan Acosta joined here by our Sabres insider, Paul Hamilton. Buffalo is at the All-Star break. They sit at 22, 23, and 4. Paul, certainly the way things were going this season, it looks like it could have been worse. The team playing a little bit better as of late. But when you look at that record, that's certainly not where this team was hoping to be at the All-Star break.
Yeah, and you look at it, they're 9 points. All they've done when they've played pretty good lately. They're 9-6-1 lately. That's not too bad. But they have not picked up 1 point in the standings. They are still 9 points out of the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And that's the problem that they're having. They've leapfrogged one of the 6 teams by going 9-6-1. They've only leapfrogged Montreal. They haven't caught anybody else. So it's not just the Detroit Red Wings who are in that 8th spot that they're chasing. It's those other teams that maybe you've gotten a little closer to them, but you haven't caught any of them. So, and you say, well, how can that be? How can Luukkonen be 6-3-0 with a 1.57 goals against and a .940 save percentage since, I believe it is December 30th? How can that be where you get great goaltending, you've straightened out your defense, since that's in that same time period, you've only given up 2.3 goals a game. That's third in the NHL. You're the third best defensive team in the NHL in the calendar year.
Right.
And you have not gained 1 point in the playoffs.
Right.
And, that's the problem with it. So people are sitting at home going, why? Well, you've been outscored in the first period 62-34. That means in most of your games, you are chasing. You are chasing the game. That's a hard thing to do.
And it's something they had to do in these past 2 wins that they had on the California road trip against LA and against San Jose. Credit to them, they came back and won those games, but they still went down by 2 goals in each of those first periods.
They did. In Los Angeles, they scored 4 unanswered goals, and in San Jose, they scored 5 unanswered goals after falling behind by 2 goals. There was one game, New Jersey scored 4 on them in the first period. Well, you're done. There are a lot of games where they've had 3 scored on them. In most games, when that happens, you're done. Now, Los Angeles, they got 3, Buffalo won. Again, because they came back and scored 4 unanswered goals and won 5-3. But when you're giving up 2-3 goals all the time, yes, I understand the Sabres have outscored their opponents 62-41 in the third period, but by the time you've rolled to the third period, you're still down usually. Right. So again, you're chasing the game, trying to get back into it. And you can say to yourself, imagine where they'd be. I mean, they're plus, do math very quickly, plus 21, I believe, in the third period and -1 in the second period. Can you imagine if you were even in the first period, where this team would be right now?
They'd be sitting in a playoff spot.
Sure they would. But they're not ready to play. Why? A lot of people blame it on Granato. He should take part of the blame, absolutely.
How much do you think?
He's the head coach. He should take part of the blame. But we're talking about compete. We're talking about people not ready. I am a firm believer for the many years I've covered this team and covered the National Hockey League. If you get to the NHL and you need a coach to motivate you to play a hockey game, you don't belong in the National Hockey League. You were an elite player to be in the National Hockey, the best of the best. How did you get there? Because a coach motivated you all the way through? No. You're a self-motivator, and that's why you're a great player. Well, if you need a coach to give you a kick in the butt and to motivate you to play a hockey game, Adams has to find out who those people are and get rid of them right away. Same thing with compete. Compete, to me, is a personal issue. Either you have the gumption and you have it in your fiber to compete, or you don't. And if you don't belong in the National Hockey League. And again, Adams needs to find those guys that don't have it within themselves or the pride to compete on a regular basis and get rid of those players. I don't care who they are. If they can't get themselves to compete and they need a coach to fool them, yell at them, scream at them, whatever, to get them to compete, They don't belong in the National Hockey League. To me, that is a personal issue. That's not a coaching issue.
So so we're making your point clear, you think Granato obviously deserves some blame as the head coach.
Yes.
But you're saying this is more of a roster construction issue, and that this roster, as currently constructed and presented, is not a playoff caliber team right now, and that it's on Kevin Adams to make the moves necessary to get this roster to where it needs to be.
It absolutely is a roster construction thing. They need a line that is hard to play against. They don't need fighters. I mean, I get the people that are still in the 70s who think, well, the Sabres should be brawling all the time. No, what they need are guys where the other team shows up and goes, I don't want to play against those guys. I'm going to get hit every time. They're going to be forechecking. They're going to be relentless, and it's going to be a hard game.
And I know you've made the point that Vancouver is almost a good model for this team to follow potentially. I just want you to go ahead and explain for the people watching why you think Vancouver is maybe a good model.
They did. Look at some of the players that they got. They aren't 50 goal scorers. They had their goal scorers. They had the super talented hockey players. They had to fill in. They weren't a great team last year, but they realized those are the guys we need. Guys who have won Stanley Cups. Guys who have been winners, guys who have come in and compete every night, guys that are hard to play against. You don't need 10 of them, but you need a line of them that can go out there and really do that. Yes, you need talent. There's no question. You need a couple of lines of talent. Sabres have that. It's just like Tampa Bay had that before they won the Stanley Cup. Remember, they got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Why? Because they didn't have the type of players that we're talking about.
And that's after they had that historic regular season.
Right. So they kept their talent, but they went out and formed. They got a guy like Patrick Maroon, who won in St. Louis, is one of the hardest players in the National Hockey League to play against. They went out and got 3 or 4 guys like that, and they won back-to-back Stanley Cups. That's what they needed. They didn't touch their talent. And I don't necessarily think the Sabres have to touch theirs. But when you get to their bottom 6, a lot of it is no man's land. And they got to find a line like that. And until they do, I just don't think they're constructed very well.
On a bigger picture issue, real quick, consistency has also been a huge issue for this team. They haven't won 3 straight games all season. For a large chunk of the season, they couldn't string together 2 consecutive wins. That's changed a little bit this past month. They have 3 different 2-game win streaks, but obviously if you want to make a push for the playoffs, you need to string together 3, 4, 5.
Keep going.
As they go into 3, 4, 5, 6,
8,
7,
9,
8,
10.
we see Edmonton, the kind of historic run that they're on.
To pick up 9 points, we're talking 8 to 10. They got to go on a streak because 9, 6, and 1. That is not too bad. And you didn't pick up 1 point in your playoff run, not 1.
Right.
So you're right. They have to go on a streak, but it's got to be a 7, 8, 9, 10-game winning streak. Are they capable of that? They haven't shown us that they are yet.
So they have a 4-game homestand coming out of the All-Star break. I guess as they go into that, what kind of momentum do you think? Did you see any positive signs in this California road trip this last month of this season where you have said that they've been playing better that maybe speaks to an ability to maybe turn it up a notch as they really start to make a playoff push down the second half of the season?
We should be saying, nice job, you won 2 out of 3 games. I'm saying they blew an opportunity because they lost to the 3rd worst team in the National Hockey League. Why? Because they played 6 minutes. They played 6 minutes in that hockey game and almost got a point out of it. When they finally started playing, it was when Anaheim took a penalty. There was about 6 minutes left in the game. Buffalo pulled the goaltender. They're down 3-0. They scored on the 6-on-4. Then they scored on the 5-on-4 after they pulled the goalie. And all of a sudden, they played the best they could possibly play after they basically killed the whole 54 minutes where they were awful, absolutely awful. It was inexcusable the way they were playing. There was no compete. There was no hustle. There was nothing. And they almost pulled that game out anyway just by playing 6 minutes. Imagine maybe if they played 10 minutes, they might have won the game.
Paul, how do you explain that, and specifically speaking back to consistency, where we've seen this team, some of its flashes, they've gone out and beat some of the best teams in the NHL. They've beat the Bostons, the Torontos, the Colorados, and then you see a game like the one they play against Anaheim the other night. Just how do you explain that, and how does that speak to the lack of consistency?
And that's the maddening part that fans... that trip alone, if a fan watched the Anaheim game, the next night watched the Los Angeles game, they saw the worst of the Sabres and the best of the Sabres. And that's how can you go up against Los Angeles, who is a playoff team? They're slumping right now. and play that well, and then go up against Anaheim, who wasn't playing that well. I don't think they had won at home in 6 games, and lay the egg like that. I mean, and that's why, as I said, as it turned out, they should have won all 3 games on the road trip. You had that homestand right before where they had 6 games at home, went 3-3. There was a stretch in that homestand where Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen let in 1 goal in 2 games and the Sabres were 1-1. How do you go 1-1 when your goaltender lets in 1 goal in 2 games? He let in 3 goals in 4 games and they went 2-2. Again, how do you go 2-2 when your goaltender only let in 3 goals in 4 games plus an empty netter? It's astounding to me. And those are wasted opportunities, and there have been a lot. We can go through a lot of games this year that have been wasted opportunities and points that they've desperately needed that they didn't get.
I'm glad you brought up Luukkonen, though, because if there is one thing to feel good about so far this season about the Sabres, it's the play of UPL. A 2.61 goals against average, 908 save percentage. He's been arguably the brightest spot on this team so far this year. What do you think has been the difference with him? And we know Levi is down in Rochester now. How do you assess just the overall goaltending situation with Buffalo, with UPL really taking that #1 spot?
He is absolutely the #1, and he was playing well until he got sick. He didn't play at all because they decided that they were going to have Levi start the season, and he was the #1 goalie, and they basically handed it to him. The inconsistencies were there. And then Luukkonen finally got an opportunity because of injury. He played like 5 straight games, played very well, and then he got sick. Whatever sickness he got, he was really sick. So when he came back, he wasn't all that good. You know, he had to get him the strength back and get back into it again. Mm-hmm. And it was just about 9 games ago that all of a sudden it all kicked in. I mean, a 1.57 and a 940 save percentage, 6-3 in the last 9 games. I mean, he absolutely is the #1 goaltender. And if they want to, if he can do it, if he can stand up to it and not wear down, he can, with the schedule the way it is, he can play the rest of the games except 2 or 3. That's it.
Do you think that's something he's capable of?
The next back-to-back is the first week in March when they go to Toronto and Nashville. That's the next back-to-back. And you can't have Levi sitting around watching him do that because he is the #1 goaltender. And Levi should be the #1 goaltender in Rochester. He is 22 years old. He's got to play, especially when Luukkonen has taken the job like that. Luukkonen has not shown signs other than when he got sick of wearing down. And it's like every other day, or it's kind of goofy when they come back. They have this big break. They play a week from Tuesday, and then they have like 3 days off till they play again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you had a big break of, from yesterday until practice on Sunday, and then you have another practice on Monday, then you play on Tuesday, then you have another break again.
Right. It's weird for the schedule.
Yeah, it makes no sense, but, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is it's not going to be real hard for him to play as much as they want to play him unless, again, he starts to wear down.
One of the other bright spots for this team recently had been the play of that Cousins, Peterka, Quinn line, but a downer with Quinn's injury against San Jose. When you look at the replay, it didn't look great the way that leg was caught. Just what do we know about that injury, and just how much of a downer is that, especially for a guy like Jack Quinn who had worked so hard to come back from that Achilles injury, and it started to play really well for this Buffalo team?
And the thing he's a good kid. He's not a jerk. He's a really good kid. And you feel bad for him that he's got to go through this again. He worked so hard to come back. And I got to see a lot of the work that he put in, skating by himself sometimes after the team skates or before the team skates. And I didn't probably even get to see 70% of the work he put in. But he worked really, really hard to get back. Dylan Cousins was lost. They didn't know what to do with him when Quinn wasn't there. He was playing wing. He was playing center. He was on this line. He was on that line. And I'm talking about one period he was doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a nomad. They had no place for him, and the numbers showed it. Well, Quinn shows up, and now he's Dylan Cousins again. And now Peterka is Peterka again. He's on a 31-goal pace. I mean, I looked at the pace Cousins is on. It's just the goals. Last year he had 37 assists. This year he's on a pace for 33. He's not so far off with assists. It's the goals right now that he's off, 31 to 18. But lately, I think he has 7 points maybe in his last 4 games, something like that.
He's just looked more like Dylan Cousins this last recent stretch.
And even before he and Peterka started scoring, that line very often was the best line. They just weren't putting the puck in the net.
Right.
And that would upset him. He'd say, yeah, that's great. I'm playing well. I'm glad I'm playing well, but I am paid to score goals. I am paid to produce, and I'm not producing. And it really, really upset him. So now they finally are all producing, and now this happens. And Don Granato, the only thing he could say is, we know it's not day to day. And I think watching the injury, we kind of all knew that.
Right.
That it's not going to be day to day. So it just.
So what do you do with that line then? What do you do with Cousins? Because we've talked about him kind of being up and down in the lines and stuff like that. What do you try to keep Cousins and Peterka together and move someone down to that line?
I would stop moving Cousins around and just put somebody in there, not named Olofsson. I might. Now the problem with Kulik is Lance Lysowski was just talked to him, and was kind of run down from the World Junior, and he has had a little bit of trouble producing since he's been back to Rochester.
Is that something where maybe Skinner comes back when Skinner's back, goes back on the top line? Maybe move Benson onto that line with Cousins.
Well, they could put him there. I did like, they moved Tuck with Middlestat and Greenway. That was really good. And of course, the Cousins line. The line I didn't like was Thompson centering Oposo and Skinner. If you were numbering lines, and coaches don't number lines anymore, but if you were, that would have been your third line. And it didn't go very well for them. And then Benson, he needed a break. He needed a rookie break. Granato does that with the kids, and I like it. Give them a day off. Like, okay, go watch some film, relax. We're going to put you back in the lineup. Just take a breath. He did that with Johnson. He did it with Cousins. He's done it with Peterka. He's done it with Quinn. He's done it with a lot of the young guys, Krebs. And I like that he did that with Benson. So Benson could maybe slide in there. I would say it's a good opportunity because Kulik, the game he played with, I don't know who was it, Krebs and Oposo, or he played on a line where if he's playing on that line, he should just stay in Rochester. If he's here, he needs to be in a top six situation. So if Seth Appert feels he's kind of perked up a little bit and back and feels that he could help the team and the Sabres bring him here, fine. Put him out there with Cousins and Peterka, let him go with that and see how that goes. But putting him on another line like that, you're wasting his time, I think.
One more specific area that I know has been a source of frustration for a lot of fans who've watched this team is the power play. 28th in the NHL. It just feels like for a team because we've talked about this team has been so good at 5-on-5 relative to how poorly they've played on the power play. That's something that could just be league average. This team would find itself in a better situation in terms of the playoffs. What has gone wrong on the power play? What does the team need to look at to make that a better thing for the team?
Well, the thing is, it's pretty much the same guys they were the top power play for a while last year. They were in the top 3 or 5 for most of the year. I think they wound up around 8. They slumped it a little bit at the end of the year. But they were a top power play for most of last year, which is one of the reasons they were within 1 point of the playoffs. Same guys, basically, and now they're awful. I think a lot of it starts with the quarterback, Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. I don't think either one has played all that well in the power play. I think they hesitate. They start thinking instead of reacting. And I just don't think either one has done a great job in quarterbacking the power play. On the number 1 power play, first they had trouble entering the zone. They've seemed to correct that a little bit. They can at least get it into the zone.
Right, because before, there's a lot of wasted time on the power play.
Right.
They're not even.
They couldn't even get it in.
Yeah.
Now everybody shifts to Thompson because Dahlin has to shoot more, so they don't have to respect that all that much. There's nobody at all in the other circle that's going to shoot the puck. So, all right, well, we'll just go to Thompson and make sure he doesn't shoot. We'll block every shot he takes. Mm-hmm. We'll get in his way. We'll make sure we take passes away from it. And until the Sabres make other teams respect that other circle and the middle of the ice with Dahlin and Power, that, hey, they might shoot. So we have to respect that. And for whatever reasons, they both have gotten the yips when it comes to that. Dahlin, I've noticed, is shooting a little bit more, but still, teams, they just take Thompson away. Now they're done because the Sabres really haven't shown anything else that they can do on a regular basis other than a couple of games when Tuck brought the puck to the front of the net. And they scored some nice goals because he was able to come cross crease to a wide open Middlestat or Skinner, and they have a wide open net to put the puck in. That was something different that they did. But I haven't seen enough of that either, but they've got to come up with things like that where other teams have to respect that. And if they got to take that away, that might open up Thompson and others for opportunities.
All right, so I think we've touched on a lot of the things that have sort of plagued this team, why they're not playing at the level that they're playing. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Maybe a final thought just as you look ahead to this All-Star break coming up and maybe the Sabres' outlook for when they come back.
Well, many people thought, in the offseason, their goaltenders stink, get rid of Luukkonen, go trade for somebody, and they're like the goaltending was the only thing wrong. Goaltending was wrong. There was no question about it. Whether they needed to get rid of Luukkonen, as I said in the summertime, I don't know if he's a number one goalie, but I'm not getting rid of a 24-year-old goaltender who has shown some signs at times. I can't tell you if he's going to be a number one goalie, but I wouldn't get rid of him yet. Right now, he's looking like he can be a number one goaltender. We'll see how it goes for them. So, you have the goaltending. And as we mentioned before, if they want to salvage this season, they've got to go on a streak that's more than 2 or 3 games. They really have to get on a roll. And they've got to get guys, Tage Thompson, Tuck, Skinner, Cousins, Middlestep, Peterka, all playing together, Dahlin. And Dahlin has to be elite. Maybe going to the All-Star game will get him, jazzed up again, and he can become an elite player again. Because we have not seen the elite Rasmus Dahlin, and part of the makeup of the Buffalo Sabres to be a championship team includes Rasmus Dahlin being elite. He must be elite for the Buffalo Sabres to be a winner.
All right, Paul, we'll see what this break does for the team. Sometimes rest can be a good thing. If they were developing a little bit of mojo, sometimes the rest can interrupt it. We'll see how they come back from the All-Star break. They're off until next Tuesday, and then a test right off the bat against the Dallas Stars here in Buffalo to kick off a 4-game homestand, a homestand that you'd think they'd like to go 3-1, 4-0 if possible. So we'll see if the Sabres can get on a roll after the break, but that's it for this edition of Sabres Take 2. For Paul Hamilton, I'm Jonathan Acosta.